Listeners of the T.R.O.N Podcast, I have a very special guest today. This is a story of inspiration, success, overcoming adversity, and the embodiment of the American dream. It goes to show you when you put your mind to something, you can accomplish just about anything you want. Arias Websterberry, ladies and gentlemen, from the great state of Texas.
Appreciate you having me, Rashad. And you said it right, great state of Texas. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Hot. It's a warm one up there, man. But thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
So please, you've overcome adversity and came out on the other side and saw success, and your determination and your story almost reads like a movie, to be quite honest with you. So tell us a little bit about your background, because it's your job to tell your story, not mine, and how you became the entrepreneur that you have.
I mean, I don't know if we got all that time, but yeah, man. It's funny. Most of these things happen. I'm 40 now. Most of these things happened 3 decades ago, and it wasn't until recently that I started openly talking about these things. Not because I was ashamed of them or anything like that. I just didn't think that they were that interesting, right? A lot of people have sob stories. A lot of people deal with various things, but apparently mine's interesting. At least that's what people tell me. But I'm Arias. I'm born in Texas. I was raised in San Diego. So once I was in middle school, getting ready to go to high school, we moved to San Diego, California, sunny San Diego. And the thing, yeah, man, in my opinion, one of the greatest cities or as far as looks, right, and weather, it's one of the most beautiful cities in the continental United States. Yeah. But, I didn't get to choose my path. I went through a lot of hardship, and I had to build an exit ramp from survival to significance. So, my journey is I was raised by a single mom. My father got caught up in the crack epidemic, or what they call the opioid epidemic now, in the 80s and early 90s. Struggled with drug addiction for the better part of 15, almost 20 years, or for 15 years. And eventually he ended up passing away. He died.
Sorry to hear about that.
Was killed, really, in an altercation with police officers on the side of the road. And I was about 13, 14 years old. I was a freshman in high school. And, that kind of rocked my world. My dad wasn't around a lot because of his addiction. My mother loved him, but, she loved me more. And she said, you can see your son whenever you've got your head on straight, you got your shit together. And most of the time he didn't, unfortunately. He tried, but, he lost that battle. And it was tough. And, it was tough on my mom. My mom worked hard. She worked 2 full-time jobs for years and years to make sure that we had enough, right? We weren't poor. We definitely weren't rich, right? We were poor enough to where there wasn't a whole lot of extra, but, we had enough to where I could be in a decent neighborhood. My mom finagled to get me into a decent, high school. So
right.
I go to college at a community college, and my mom gets a new boyfriend. She's an empty nester, and he puts his hands on her, and she fights back, and it goes too far, and she ends up stabbing him. And the court deemed that she went past self-defense, so they gave her several years in jail. So that was tough, because so when I'm a freshman in high school, my dad passes. And then when I'm a freshman in college, my mom ends up going to jail. So my foundation, my financial base, kind of my emotional support is gone. And I also wasn't in San Diego. I had moved to Orange County to go to school up there. So, I'm out of my element a bit. You're 18. Nobody knows anything when they're 18. I don't know anything about getting an apartment. I don't have a car. I don't know anything about credit. I don't know how to balance a checkbook. I have no savings. I have no assets. I have no, rich friends. And we moved from Texas, so I didn't really have much family in the area. So it was tough. And I ended up dropping out of college because I had to get a job. I needed to find a place to live. I needed to get a car. I needed to, there's a lot of things.
Survive. You need to survive.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was tough. I was homeless for a while. I realized that I didn't have any real friends.
Yeah.
When I asked them to stay on their couch, they were like,
that's the first thing your friend does. A good friend, be like, listen, man, this is what happened. The door's open. Stay in the basement. Even if you crash on weekends, maybe I can't keep you all week, but there's something I can do.
whatever I can do, right? So, and I mean, I don't blame them. I had just moved into the area, right? It's
Right.
not like these were people that I had known since,
Long
middle
term.
school or elementary and stuff like that.
Right, right, right.
But, I realized that I had to grow up fast. And, you know, my journey is one from, you know, instability to eventually figuring out how to carve out a path in this world for myself. So, I got a job at a local gym and went from working the graveyard shift at the front desk to begging the GM to let me try my hand at sales. I figured
Great.
that thing out. And then eventually I got another sales job and another one. And eventually I made okay money. But in that process, even when I was in high school, I used to throw parties, right? I
Okay.
used to throw parties in high school. I was an athlete, I played multiple sports.
Yeah.
And when I got to college and even out of it, I realized that I kind of had a knack for getting people to come to events. So at this time, social media was starting to become a thing. So I did a little bit of marketing for a record label. And that same owner of that record label asked me if I could do marketing for his promotions company. I did that.
Yeah.
And
I
that
love hearing stories like this, man, because it just like I don't want to cut you off, but like
yeah.
it sounds like a movie where like the guy is just like he's at the gym, then he knows the guy
Mhm.
that does the record label. He has the guy who's the great sales guy, and then he's like, "Hey, man, you're already great at this. I really need to get like I mean parties." And I'm not going to talk over you.
No, you're good.
Start to become events and start to become bigger and actual collaborative things. And
Yeah.
like you have so many history of so many musicians who started off just as party promoters.
Yeah, yeah, Diddy's one of them, right? That was his
I
big
wasn't
thing.
gonna say that name. I'm not sure how that
Hey,
was
look,
gonna.
man, I mean, hey, no matter what he's done or
Yeah,
not done or what he's been accused of or
that
proven guilty,
right,
you can't take away the
right.
things that he's actually done and the lessons that you can learn, good and bad,
That's
from him,
how that's
right?
how he went from Uptown Record, throwing parties to Uptown Records to
Mhm.
Bad Boy Records, right? I just didn't want your face to make a certain impression if I was like Diddy, like the obvious, like because he was just, I mean, everybody knows that's how he got to start, right?
Yeah.
Just throwing parties
Mhm.
when he was in
Well,
college, and you're
because
just like, holy smokes, man!
it's one of those things that, is I don't want to say easy, but it's something that appeals to most people, right?
Yes.
Wanting to let your hair down after a long day or a long week, a
Hmm.
party, a club, whether it's a house party or, something on a rooftop, right? Or some rave.
Exactly.
Everybody kind of at some point wants to get out and relax.
And with all respect, it doesn't seem salesy, right? Like, so
Right.
like it doesn't seem salesy. Like, hey man, you deserve this. You're owed this. You can meet that guy, that girl, you get that outfit, that haircut, right? So it doesn't become, man, this guy's gonna sit back and try to pitch me the higher to the lower to finally
Mhm.
the base model, so to speak, right? Of whatever that could be, right? But now it's just a case of like, man, get out and have a good time. Again, like I said, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was just was rolling through my mind while you were talking all that.
Yeah, man. And, like I said, I never thought of any of this stuff as interesting or a movie. It was just, a turn of unfortunate events that, I kind of clawed my way out of.
Mhm.
So yeah, I started with, I think I was 19, 20. I wasn't even old enough to be in these clubs, but, I was marketing them and I did a pretty good job. And from there, I ended up doing some events on my own, some like custom events. And then I eventually got into small concerts and then medium sized
Yeah,
concerts and then, bigger
right.
concerts. And eventually I got into festivals, right? My largest
Nice.
being the Hip Hop 101 Music and Arts Festival. It was at the LA Sports Arena in Los Angeles. And we had, Janelle Monáe and Common and Ludacris and,
Nice.
Kerry
Nice.
Hilson and Mixmaster Mike from the Beastie Boys and an enormous amount of other
Yeah.
people. And it was huge, man. We had like 17,000 people there.
That's
Uh,
amazing. That's absolutely mind blowing.
yeah.
That's
And it,
absolutely mind blowing.
and this is, from, I guess, time wise, from me graduating and to then, I want to say it's a period of like maybe 6 years or so. So, in the movie, it's always, a short period of time. The time lapse happens in like
Oh, I
60
know.
seconds, right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah, 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 yeah.
it wasn't 60 seconds, it was 6 years,
Right.
you
And well,
know?
the other funny part about it is that unlike a movie, you can pause it and you like, okay, well that part was interesting, but not so much. You're living this in real time,
Hmm.
and I think one of the things that even though you graduate from college, I'm not dissing college, to each his own. I went to college. It doesn't teach you that, right? It doesn't teach you like here you are sitting in all these business courses and marketing courses. Meanwhile, you're on the ground like, hey man, I'm figuring this out on the ground up, and I'm talking to people in real time. So for people who want to, follow your story and your path, I'm not certainly not going on, giving too much perspective. Sometimes you just have to find out a way to get your hands dirty.
Indeed, that's what it is. Whatever path, right? It's kind of like a running back. They hand you the ball, and there's just a wall of commotion and movement, and it's just like you got to find a gap
Yeah,
and
yeah,
try not to get creamed in the process.
yeah. You're right.
So yeah, we did this big concert, and then I guess again, like a movie, I'm riding high, everything's going great, and then the economy just
Mm,
plummets. Right, 2009.
mm, mm.
Housing market crisis. I'm in California, which was one of the hardest hit.
Ground zero.
The credit freeze, the recession, banks closing, subprime mortgages, all these
Oh,
issues,
for
right?
sure. Yes, absolutely.
So all the people I usually went to invest in a concert or in an event were like, man, look, I lost my house, I lost my business, I lost my kids, I lost my wife, I lost my car. Man, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
I don't have
For sure.
anything to invest.
For sure.
And that was
For
the
sure.
story for most of the people I went to. And, I tried to stick it out for a couple of years, and it was tough. So I ended up moving. That was one of the first times I went really high. Had an apartment in downtown San Diego in a high rise. I was driving an Escalade at a Mercedes. I was hitting it, right? I was rolling.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I was
yeah.
traveling all over the place. I'm like a 20-something-year-old kid, jumping
I
here
wasn't
and
doing
there.
that in my 20s. I mean, dude, man, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, like, you're like the sky, like, the sky's the limit, like the song, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you're up to mogul status. And then, but that's not a diss on your business model. The world came to a crashing halt. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. But I mean, that's the reality, right? At any given time, this illusion of control, this illusion of having it all together, you have to be able to weather it. So I tried to, and it was tough. I ended up moving back to Texas. I ended up
mhm.
back on my grandmother's spare bedroom for some time. I went to my aunt's house, and
Yeah.
my brother, which again is a part of this soap opera drama. My brother and we have different moms, and I didn't meet my brother until um, my dad's funeral.
Oh,
I met
wow.
him in the limo on the way to my dad's funeral. It was like the first
Oh,
time I'm
wow.
being introduced to this guy who's half of me.
Wow.
So I get back to Texas. We talked every once in a while, in that time, and he says, "Hey man, I know you're trying to get back on your feet. I'm working with this one company. You worked in clubs. You know how to bartend." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, yeah, throwing
Yeah,
lots of parties. I know how to put some drinks together." But he
right.
got me on at this events company, just doing some bartending, and I did that for a while because you can make a decent amount of money as a bartender.
Sure
Did that
can.
for years, and eventually I worked my way into a digital marketing agency, right? The largest digital marketing agency in the world at the time, which was Reach Local, and
Wow.
that's where I got my formal training in digital marketing. I learned Google AdWords. I learned how to set up campaigns and how to sell people on, this new emerging technology of, being able to pay to play, right? Pay Google to give you some customers, right?
Right, right, right.
And that opened me to, building websites and creating content for social media and email and, database management and, generating
Yes.
leads, all these different things. So I got a crash course, and I ended up freelancing kind of on the side while I was
Mhm.
doing this. And eventually I broke out on my own and I started this thing that we now call WebsterBerry Marketing.
It's not just something, man. I mean, you got state senators on there and stuff like that that are going to you for their muscle. You know what I mean? A thing is like, tinkering in your basement and hoping that your friends like it. You have a full fledged business. When you Google somebody and you start seeing, and then you go on their website to make sure that they're authentic. And I've been the fortunate distinction of having authentic people on the show. But there's a lot of the internet is full of charlatans, right? Like
Hmm.
we all know that, and so I'm like, I Google everybody, see what they're officially about, and then there's I'll keep the 4 letter words to myself. I'm like, this guy really like, yo, this is impressive, and it's just like he's got these testimonials, he's got the lighting on the stages. For people who haven't visited this man's website, he's the real deal. And now you're deciding. And what I love about your testimonials about yourself, you said, I want to help others reach my success. I want to help other people reach where I'm at. So for people who are starting out, or for people who are trying to get where they're there, they're a unicorn. What are the pratfalls that you can help them avoid?
Those that are trying to get there, what are the pitfalls? I would say in
Like
business.
misconceptions about like digital marketing, like misconception about digital. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, I would say, especially when you're early in business, I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to do everything at once or going too big all at once.
Yeah.
One of my mentors always told me, dream big areas, but work small, right?
Right.
And your ability to see yourself 10, 15, 20 years from now, but be able to focus on what your goal for this month or this quarter, right? What you got to get done this day is critical. You don't need to be on 12 different platforms, right? Maybe
Right.
just get on one and own that one. You don't need to have 20 different products, right? If you can sell $1 million at one, right, and then move
Right.
on to the next one.
Yeah. Right.
It's the looking at the best in your industry and seeing them at their best and comparing them to you at your beginning and at your worst, and feeling that you're behind or you need to emulate everything that they're doing, even though they have, millions and millions of dollars at their disposal and
Right.
huge teams and, guys with video
Right.
cameras that run around and PR agents and,
You don't have that. You don't
exactly.
have that. Just don't
And
have it.
it's okay. You don't need all that, right? You need one thing that you can master and you can figure out how to get results out of it. So I think that would probably be the biggest thing is, finding or whittling down the one area that you can master, that you can dominate, that you can get predictable results out of and working that to your best of your ability.
It's funny you say that, right? So it's like kind of like, this podcast, so to speak, right? I called it the T.R.O.N, the randomness of nothing. And so my first step was just get a guest. Just, hey man, and don't botch the first interview. Just don't, because then, that momentum is either going to snowball. And then, I got a chance to now talk to people like yourself. And to your point, if you start, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way. I can't compare myself to Joe Rogan. Like, dude, like, come on, man.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to happen, right? And so that doesn't mean that the formula of what you're doing isn't replicated. But if you're not going to sit back and say, I'm just going to have compelling guests on my particular platform and let the chips fall where they may, and be good at talking to people like yourself, talk to people like some of my previous guests. I've had celebrity chefs, I've had CEOs, I've had various different business people. Know your lane, so to speak, right? And master your lane. And then the mimic territory stops coming into effect, because then, okay, this guy's just trying to do his own thing and he's okay with that. And you hit the nail on the head with that. Comparison is a terrible thing, particularly in the internet era where you can readily see, I don't have the six pack. I'm not 6 feet tall. Me, why not me? Why not me? And you'll go insane. You'll go absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, the what's the term? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what services do you offer? Obviously, I've been to your website, but for the purpose of the show, can you tell people what the services that your marketing company offers?
Yeah. WebsterBerry Marketing. We're a Black-owned, centric, marketing agency. We are full service. So we've got a staff of 20 plus. And we do social media management. We do public relations. We do social media advertising. So we help generate leads, help generate sales. We build websites, we build apps. We do database management, email marketing, text marketing. We build AI agents and employees. We integrate systems, build out CRMs. We do all the things. When it comes to business and you trying to grow the business, a lot of times, a lot of these gurus will tell you, "Oh man, all you got to do is pay, $19.99, take my course, and you're gonna be on your way to 7 figures, man. The next 90 days, man, you're gonna be a millionaire." And is it possible? Absolutely, right?
For sure.
Is it plausible? Absolutely not. Keep it real, right?
They make money off the subscriptions of people actually taking the course, not the actual results that people achieve.
Exactly. And that's the key. We do all of the things that the gurus talk about, right? When you come to my agency, we put together the strategy and the plan to actually execute the thing. The average entrepreneur doesn't know how to build attribution models once they, start running ads to keep track of who came from where.
Right.
Even if they did, they don't know what to do with the data. Right? They don't know how to
Right.
segment a list of people and automatically start sending emails and text messages based on what page they hit on your website, right? All
Right.
those things are
Right.
extremely intricate and complicated. And the reality is most people don't have that much time and they don't have that much money.
Right.
So you come to us and we kind of take care of all those things, right? There's a
For
lot of stuff
sure.
that we do on the back end that you'll never know that we do, but we do it because we know we need the data so that we can make a decision to help you make money.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, and, anybody who's ever, started anything, whether they've been successful or unsuccessful or not, typically when you play basketball, if you're right-handed, you don't work on your left hand,
Hmm.
right? It's, until, you get that wake up call that, somebody stopped your right hand. So translation is that if you're not good at something, you're going to give it the least amount of attention, right? So, you could build compelling products. You could build, you could have a great idea in your head, but because of the services that you're offering, I hate to say this, but it's the less sexy part of what somebody ultimately needs to be successful. Right? And you're like, dude, I'm really, and for anybody who's ever tried to do what you do without the necessary skill set to do it, it usually blows up in their face, right? Because it is a long learning curve to learn digital marketing. It is
Mhm.
and it's a lot of algorithms. It's a lot of data management. I can only speak for myself. There's times where I've talked about stuff in my house, and then I look at my Gmail and I'm like, how the heck did that end up in my email as an advertisement? Right? And you're like, holy smoke. But that's how embedded this data and information can be, and
Absolutely.
it's amazing.
It's huge. And, AI is kind of leveling the playing field, but I would say that most people don't even know where to start with that, right? A lot of people are still trying to figure out how to connect their Gmail CRM, right? Um, AI is several steps in the future. So
Right.
yeah,
Well, that's what it's always funny. And the people who are planning these things are always 5 years ahead of everything else, right? So just because we're seeing the finalized product right now in real time doesn't mean that the version 4.0 isn't being worked on right now. So, you know, that's where people have to get to. So based on what you've done for people, how are you getting these other people to where you are? When you say that you want to help 1,000 people reach 100,000, and you want to help people reach seven figures and things like that, how has that come into fruition?
because of my background, right? Because of me not coming from money, me coming from movement, moving from
Mhm.
house to house, situation to situation, trying to survive, but before I was 18, I had lived in over a dozen homes, right?
Unbelievable.
So, I didn't really have any investors. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have any blueprints. I just had
Mhm.
grit, Google, and a gut feeling, that I was meant to be more and that if I kept working at it, I could figure it out.
Right.
And I realized that there's a lot of us struggling with that, right?
Yeah.
Especially Black men, right? I
Right.
will say Black women tend to ask for help more. They
Mhm.
tend to go seeking knowledge and information more.
Mhm.
We're a little more stubborn. We are more stoic. We're the I don't need help. I can figure it out myself types.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Let
because
the
of
fail
that,
flat on your face, then say, "Hey, man, this is beyond my scope of knowledge, and it's time for somebody to reach out to."
exactly. And, because of that, I know because I work with hundreds of entrepreneurs that they need help. There's a lot of things that they don't know are not
Right.
going to know. And, there's a lot of people in the digital marketing space, but there aren't a lot of people who look like me. And there's even
Mhm.
fewer people that look like me that are trying to market to and help people that look like me. So,
Well, definitely. And I think the other part to that stool is that, if you do fall and stumble and you do need resources to reach out to, your inner circle may not have the right answers, right? So there's the unfortunate distinction where your neighborhood may not be the people you really have to seek outside of where you're coming from to be able to get help because you didn't come from the circumstances. You're like, dude, I can't go to my neighbor. I don't know a CEO. I don't know, I don't know anybody that could actually pull me off to the side and say, you're doing this wrong. Do this instead. You know?
yeah. And I mean, that's where the 100x impact came from.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not doing it just because it's going to make me money. And, maybe somebody like you who's, you know, awesome and interested and curious will ask
Yeah.
me about it and I can kind of put it on a t-shirt and say, hey, I got this goal. I mean, that's probably a good idea, but, you know,
Yeah.
100x impact is my commitment to helping 1,000 entrepreneurs generate $100,000 in annual revenue and 100 entrepreneurs scale to $1 million plus in revenue by the
Wonderful.
end of 2026.
Wonderful.
And the why is because there are too many brilliant, bold, and battle tested people that stay stuck, right?
For
And it's
sure.
not because they lack passion or ability, but just because they lack a proven path, right?
Right.
And my
Right.
goal was to cut that. And I wanted to provide them with that blueprint, be that mentor, hand them the actual systems that they need in order to level the playing field amongst their peers and actually
Right.
get to the profit. So, we don't hand out a whole bunch of fluff and motivation. We hand over
Mhm.
mechanisms. Every strategy, every funnel, every automation we deploy, it has a purpose, right? And
Mhm.
the purpose is to move you from idea to income,
Yeah.
from just hustling to actual impact and harmony in your business.
That's amazing. I loved how you placed those things in big, bold words too, because it was like, this is really like, it mattered that that was part of the forefront and it wasn't hidden on your page or wasn't hidden on your profile because, what it was like to struggle and you've seen what it took to get to your success and the continued success. Now, do you branch out? And now that you do digital marketing strategies, is there other things that you branched into that said, hey, now I can dip my toe into this because this business is doing well and I can segue into something else?
Yeah, my team. I told my team I'm not going to start any more businesses, this year or next year. We're gonna keep scaling these.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have Ignite Funnels, which is a
Yeah.
all-in-one business management and marketing system. It is the
Mhm.
system that we use internally for all of my businesses, and
Okay.
90% of all of our customers of the agency also use Ignite Funnels simply because it has
Beautiful.
everything that you need to run your business, right? It's your phone
Okay.
system, email marketing, your websites, your funnels are built on it, your CRM is in it, your process, payment processing, everything that you need is in there. So that's one business. And then launchignition.ai, that
Mhm.
is a initiative and a software now to help entrepreneurs that are trying to scale to 6 and 7 figures and beyond.
Beautiful.
Basically, we help them kind
Beautiful.
of deconstruct their idea, sequence it, and then set their business up for scale so that they can come over to the agency and, run ads and do the content and all the other things that
Mhm.
we know makes them successful. But if you don't have the system kind of built first, well, then, you're putting the cart before the horse.
I guess I could pick your brain for another, the length of a movie and still had not actually, scratched the surface of what you're all about. But I got a good feeling for it. And more importantly, the fact that you're willing to share it with others is a testament to your character and who you are as a human being and a man. And so your story definitely should stop people in their tracks to say what they can't do and start thinking what they can. And one thing I will say is that you're only as small as you think that you are. So if you think you're only capable of certain things, then you're going to only stay doing certain things, right? I can't lift weights. My body won't look like this. I can't stop eating these certain foods. I'm homeless. My mother, is in jail. My father passed away. If you start putting that in your mind that these things happen to you, ultimately you're going to cap yourself out to your own potential. It's just the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. I mean, it's never what happens to you, it's how you react to it, right? It
Hmm.
is, we're all going to get knocked down. You're all going to
Of
get
course.
punched in the face, right? Someone's going to
Yeah.
pull the rug from under you and you will fall flat on your face or on your ass. It's not that's going to happen. If you're fortunate enough for that not to have happened, well,
Inevitable.
awesome. Congratulations, man. But for the rest of us
Right.
mortals,
Right.
that's just par for the course. And the reality is, you have to realize the only difference between you and someone's great is that they get up off the mat or the canvas or the field faster
That's
than
it.
you and they get back,
That's it.
right?
That's it.
So you can get
That's
back up and get back to the game,
Yep.
closer you get to the finish line. And, it's something that took me a long time to realize. I didn't have that mentor. I didn't have the dad there to dust me off and say it's okay, right?
Right.
So many
Right.
times when I would fail at things, I took it personally. I took it as a sign that I wasn't good enough or that I didn't have what it took or that,
Right.
maybe this wasn't for me. And the
Right.
reality is success, true success is built on failure, right?
Absolutely it is.
And
Absolutely
the
it is.
bigger the success, typically the bigger the failure, right?
Yep.
And now that I know that, things go wrong and I immediately pivot, to the next thing and try to forget the failure and retain the lesson.
And that's a beautiful life lesson. And I think, sometimes we have to pause and realize that at the end of the day, unfortunately the internet can sometimes, they only see the success of what somebody is when they're standing in front of that business, or they're standing in front of this is, I want to share my success with you. But nobody was viewing their story when they were, in the living room crying by themselves because their venture didn't work out, or their funding got pulled, or their business partner, scammed them, or whatever took place, or
Yeah.
they're down to their last dollars. Nobody unfortunately was there to pick them off the rug. They're only there to clap when they see the beautiful pictures. So I'm just keeping it real. You know what I mean? Just keeping it real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, the positivity that you vibed through. This was one of the interviews. I have the fortunate distinction of having a lot of wonderful guests, but this one tugged at my heartstrings in more ways than one, because your story and what you do and who you are meant a lot for me to get a chance to sit down and speak with you. So I wish you nothing but continued success. And ultimately, where can people find you?
I am not hard to find. Arias Websterberry, Arias Webster, like the dictionary, and then Berry, all one word, Websterberry. If you Google, all of my stuff comes up, but the agency by itself, just WebsterBerry Marketing on all of the socials, WebsterBerryMarketing.com. For me, it's just Arias Web on all the socials. ARIASWEB. If you want to get the book, which is in Barnes and Noble and Amazon and Google Books and all the different things, it's available as well. It's like sitting right over there. So
wonderful, man. And so much appreciate you. And like I said, nothing but continued success going forward. Thank you very much, Arias Websterberry, for being on the T.R.O.N Podcast. The randomness is nothing. So it's been an honor and absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Rashad.
Appreciate you.